So last video, I talked about the Times article / profile of Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor. Now, I'm certainly not paying for the Times subscription to get past the paywall, and I'm certainly not giving my money to Rupert Murdoch, but someone has done an incredible public service for the rest of us and posted screenshots of the article on Twitter. The Twitter user goes by the name of JRC1921. So first up in the first screenshot, we've got Rachel Reeves calling Mick Lynch rude. She was appalled by the recent interview in which Mick Lynch, the General Secretary of the Train Drivers Union, the RMT, attacked the BBC presenter Michelle Hussain about a line of questioning on the strikes. I was listening on the radio with my kids and they said, "Who was that and why is he so rude?" And I think that's probably what most people listening to that interview would have concluded. He went too far. So for context, if you haven't seen it, there was an interview with Mick Lynch, and he was pushing back on the question on the BBC by saying, why are you asking questions that seem biased against unions, but you don't ask the same level of questioning to the bosses? For example, I think they were saying, how much is it going to cost the average worker in terms of their wage by striking? How much are they going to lose? Therefore, you as the RMC leader, by calling on the strikes, you're costing working class people money. And he's like, why are you asking me this type of question when it's the government and the bosses who are forcing worse pay and conditions? Why aren't you asking them this level of questioning? And he basically said the BBC sounds quite right-wing. He was very clear, and most people would agree with him. But of course, Rachel Reeves, since her and the iteration of the Labour Party hate unions, I'm not surprised. But this next paragraph is really revealing. She is not going to be joining the striking workers. I want to govern for the whole country. If we were in government, we wouldn't be on the picket lines. We would be negotiating. She is not, however, making any promises on pay. I have been really clear as Shadow Chancellor that I will not announce anything without saying where the money is going to come from. So I'm not just going to pluck numbers out of the air. So she's committed to saying we're not going to stand with strikers, we're not going to stand on the picket lines because we're going to be in government. We're going to get around the table. Okay, you're going to get around the table presumably by, negotiating better pay. Then when asked, okay, will you give a pay rise to these striking workers? We're not going to confirm that. Not going to confirm that. So why are you so quick to confirm that you won't stand with strikers, but you're not quick to confirm that you would give them a pay rise? Very interesting. That's because Labour under Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves is now a capitalist party. If you think I'm being facetious, if you think I'm being over the top, well, let's have a look at more of the article. So in terms of income tax, this is what Rachel Reeves had to say, but she finds it hard to imagine a scenario in which Labour would go into an election calling for income taxes. I don't want to increase income tax, and I've got no intention of doing so. Well, first of all, when we talk about tax increases, whose tax we should increase? We shouldn't be increasing working class taxes. Obviously not. We should have a tax justice system, a progressive tax system. That means we need to be raising taxes on the rich. We need to be raising taxes on corporations. We need to be implementing a wealth tax, for example. All this is very popular with the people. It hits a very minority amount of people, which is the rich in society, and it benefits the many. But, again, this is the capital party, so they won't be confirming that. They won't be supporting this. And then a little snide comment from the Times. Unlike John McDonnell, Jeremy Corbyn's Shadow Chancellor Reeves does not want to overthrow capitalism, and she has never read Das Kapital. Right, okay, well, first of all, there was nothing in those manifestos that talked about overthrowing capitalism. It was a robust social democratic programme. They weren't going into the election, Corbyn that is, and McDonnell saying, this is a vote for socialism and we're going to abolish capitalism. But also, the way they say, Reeves has never read Das Kapital, that's supposed to be a dig at both, obviously, Corbyn and McDonnell, but also say, see, she's not ideological, she's not that left-wing. By the way, reading Marx's work, every politician, I would say, should be reading Karl Marx. It's not about whether you agree with him or disagree with him. It's because he has a fundamentally coherent grasp of the capitalist mode of production that even if you are a pro-capitalist, you should be reading it. Just like how I would encourage leftists to read Adam Smith, who, by the way, Adam Smith is somebody who's a pro-capitalist. He's the one who wrote about the division of labour. Also, ironically, though, he was against landlordism. So I really encourage conservatives and right-wingers to read Adam Smith because maybe they might become comrades in getting rid of landlords. But this next quote is gross. I think the dynamics of capitalism and business creation and investment are good, she says. If you want a more equal society, what's the best way to do it? Is it to lift up those at the bottom or to bring down those at the top? I'd much rather lift up those at the bottom. I'm very aspirational. This is classic conservative right-wing talking points. When progressives, socialists, leftists talk about inequality and talk about redistribution of wealth and power, the pushback is, well, you're just anti-aspirational. You just want to penalise those who have done well. It's the politics of envy. You're just jealous that you haven't quite made it. It's not true. It's just simply a way of rebalancing the economy, having workers to participate in society much better. And we've got a Labour shadow chancellor who is essentially saying, we don't want to raise income tax. I love capitalism because it's very dynamic, and investment is good, even though we know that capitalism is really bad for investment in a lot of cases, and that I don't want to penalise those on the top. What are you doing in the Labour Party? What are you doing in the Labour Party? This has nothing to do with Labour values. I understand that the Labour Party isn't a socialist party. It was helped created by socialists and trade unionists and communists, by the way, they were in the Labour movement. But I understand that it's become a social democratic party. It's not a party that seeks to overthrow capitalism, but it at least wants to ameliorate the evils of capitalism. We literally have someone saying, I don't even want to do that. Is that bad that she even criticises Ed Miliband's milquetoast, but kind of correct criticism of capitalism? She disagrees with the former Labour leader Ed Miliband's division of business into predators and producers. I wouldn't say that. Most businesses that I meet with want to do the right thing. What about Peter Mandelson's suggestion that Labour was intensely relaxed about people being filthy rich, so as long as they pay their taxes? When I say I want people to start up their own business, I don't think, but good God, don't get rich out of it. We want people to create successful businesses. So Ed Miliband is wet. Okay, he was a terrible leader, but his analysis of predators and producers isn't an opinion. That's quite literally a description of capitalism. Even some Blairites would be like, well, I mean, yeah, that's kind of true. I mean, the Labour Party seeks to curb the evils of capitalism. We're not going to deny that. But now Reeves is going even further by saying what Ed Miliband is saying is wrong. There isn't a contradiction between those that own capital, the business owners, the CEOs, and the workers. Their interests are like diametrically opposed. You can't get around that. That's a fact. And everyone knows this. Clearly, if you're a CEO of a business, like your interest is different to those that work below you. So it's like they're trying to push the Overton window even more to the right for no reason at all. It's not like, oh, we need to, triangulate and come up with right-wing arguments to get elected. No one is even talking about this. Even the Conservatives aren't talking about this, and yet they're pushing this narrative anyway. And then obviously the last sentence, clearly she says, well, I don't really care if people get filthy rich off capitalism. This is so out of touch. We have a cost of living crisis. And I say this all the time. We have a cost of living crisis, we have an energy crisis, we have a wage crisis, by the way, because we do. We've had a wage crisis for 40, 50 years before the so-called cost of living crisis, which, by the way, the cost of living crisis didn't start like last year. It's always been there, and it's been exacerbated over decades. Who are you really pitching to? Yes, all right, you need to get Tory voters to win an election, but you also need Labour voters to win an election too. You need working class people to vote for you. Why would you go out and say, we are a party that doesn't want to raise taxes on the rich, we're a party that we don't mind the rich getting richer, and the way to create prosperity is not the government intervening to help your life, it's just to leave it up to the markets. So why is she saying this? Well, it's because it's for the Times behind a paywall. And she's probably thinking, or Labour are probably thinking, well, no normie is going to read this. They can't afford it. No normal working class people can afford to read this. So we don't need to hide ourselves. So they'll go to The Guardian, pretend they're going to be a bit more left-wing than they actually are, and then do interviews for the Times and basically come out and say, this is what we are. We're a capitalist party. And they've beaten the Tories to the right on a lot of rhetoric. Labour are so lucky that Rishi Sunak is leader because he's not popular. If this was Boris Johnson's leader, he would destroy Labour at the election, because at least Boris Johnson knew, for all his faults and how much I completely disagree with 99% of what he says and believes in, he's a Tory and I'm obviously not, but he was also supportive of some popular policies like government intervention when it's needed, like furlough. I think most people still think furlough was a great thing regardless of your political opinions. And yet we've got Labour that desperately wants to push right-wing arguments when they don't even need to. So this is the Labour Party. This is a capitalist party, and they will win the next election, and things will stay the same.